Hello and welcome once again to the Windy City's finest on location at Hometown. He's Mac, I'm Perry, and this is
Adam.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here.
Thanks for coming.
And thank you for agreeing to meet with us.
Absolutely.
First thing we'll do before jumping into some icebreaker games, if you could just give us a little bit of a broad strokes overview of where we are and what it is you do, that would be amazing.
Sure. So we're in my restaurant, which is called Hometown. The formal name of the business is Hometown Culinary, but we refer to the restaurant as Hometown. I own it with my sister. We opened it back in late October of 2024. We're in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and we're right kind of in the downtown core. Beautiful building that we did a significant renovation to, and we do what we consider to be upscale comfort food. So still pretty familiar and approachable, but we just try to put a little bit of a higher end twist on things.
Nice, that's awesome, and I cannot wait to learn more about that in the future segments. But right now, we'll just jump into some icebreaker games. Our first thing is trivia. How are you with trivia typically?
It depends a little bit on the topic, but usually pretty good. I play in a league sometimes, so you know.
Okay, you might be the first person we met that plays in a league.
Oh, really?
I'm not gonna lie.
Is that right?
But still, there's no pressure. No pressure. So I'll just dive right in with our first piece of trivia for you, Adam.
Sure.
On July 12th, 1886, the all-time recorded high in Medicine Hat was approximately A, 42 degrees Celsius, B, 47 degrees Celsius, C, 37 degrees Celsius, or D, 39 degrees Celsius.
I'm going to go with 42.
Yeah, you got it. That's
nice.
That's what we learned, and yeah, it's awfully high.
That's awfully high. Yeah.
Not quite there yet, but it feels like it sometimes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will throw it to you for our first piece of secret trivia that Mac has prepared for myself.
Okay.
And we'll see how it goes. I think I got both wrong earlier today.
Oh, did you?
Okay.
Okay. Mac's partner is Spanish, and they like to cook together. If they opened a restaurant, they would probably call it A, siestas, B, tiny house tapas, C, the Three Amigos, or D, all of the above.
Oh my gosh, those are so rich based on all the things I know about Mac, which I promise I do know some things. They all sound really viable, so I'm gonna have to go with D, all of the above.
All the above was the answer.
Yes!
Now, does that mean that the restaurant's called all of the above, or is it called all three of those?
That's a very good question. We'll have to ask Mac at some point here, but yeah. Nice. Okay, my second piece of trivia for you, Adam. Mm-hmm. The oldest historic building in Medicine Hat is A, the Ewart Duggan House, B, Brown Durand Residence, C, Canadian Pacific Railway Station, or D, the Cecil Hotel.
I think it's the Ewart Duggan House.
Yeah, you got it. 2 for 2. The date we have for that is 1887.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is awfully old.
I've done some catering inside of there before.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really cool little building.
Yeah, what was that like? Like, did you just bring the food in? Were you actually cooking?
Yeah, the facilities, although people like artists and residents and stuff can sometimes stay there for periods, but it's not set up for commercial execution. So yeah, you have to bring everything in. But it's a beautiful building to use as like a function space. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to throw it to you for a second piece of trivia for me.
You bet. While on a trip to Spain, Mac tried what food for the first time? A, gazpacho, B, octopus, C, Iberian jamon, or D, churros?
I feel like you have to have tried churros, not for the first time. For the first time, right?
The first time.
I don't even know what the first one was.
Gazpacho, it's like a chilled soup.
Chilled soup?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with chilled soup.
Ooh, no, sorry. It was octopus.
Octopus. Okay, fair enough. Well, there you go. The more you know. I did not know that Mac had tried octopus. Awesome. We will move swiftly along here to our this or that in our lovely little hat here.
All right.
And I'll let you do the honors. Just pick one, read it out, and then set it aside. And we'll just get to know what your preferences are.
Sure. I only have one.
An old tangle.
Pay for parking or risk it?
Ooh.
Oh, I'm generally a rule follower.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say pay.
that's good to know, given that you are a chef, so that you like to follow the rules. I appreciate that.
Right.
I think if I can, I will do everything in my power to find a spot that doesn't require paying. But if I have to, I will probably pay for the parking and follow the rules as well. So
that's super easy in this town. There's not a lot of paid parking, but in bigger centers, I get it. And I would often drive through residential streets to try to do the same. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's see what we get next. Fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, probably nonfiction. Yeah, I'm like a politics and history and kind of space guy, so I love reading those kinds of things. I do like a lot of fiction, but I'd probably pick non if I had to choose.
Yeah, I think I am in the same boat with you. I have like a select few things that I really love that are fiction, but generally speaking, I also love the nonfiction. So we're very much on the same wavelength. I like it.
All right.
I'll throw it over to you.
Okay. Flowers or chocolate? I think chocolate every time. Yeah. If chocolate is in the mix, then it's always chocolate for me.
Nice. Yeah. I think I would also go with chocolate. Part of me wants to say flowers for some reason. Maybe it's because my mom has a super green thumb, so I'm like trying to like take care of more houseplants or not let them die as much, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, this maybe would be mine. Let's move along. Whoop. What we got here? Whoop. Study or cram?
Oh man. Man, I wish I could say study, but it's cram. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had to do either realistically, but at my university days, it was definitely cramming.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm trying to work on the studying, the consistent, over a period of time, but I think with like grant applications and stuff, I ultimately end up cramming a little bit. So.
Right.
Yeah. Let's do at least one more here.
Okay. Dress up or casual? Oh, casual. I have like a life uniform of like jeans and like a Dickies button down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, yeah, dress up is very seldom. It's a couple times a year at most. So, yeah.
Wow, that's super fair. I would also be casual. I used to sell men's clothing, suits and stuff, so
nice.
I had to be dressed up every day. And it wears off eventually.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right.
I like being comfy.
Cool.
Awesome. We'll move swiftly along to our tumbling towers over here.
Okay.
Quick review of the rules. Can't take from the top three. Once you take a block, you have to set it on top.
Yep.
And each block corresponds to a question.
Okay.
So I'll let you do the honors. And you can totally just like poke around and see what's loose.
Yeah, see what's loose. Oh, not that one. Oh, that one looks pretty good. Now, that's question 10.
10? Awesome. What's your favorite season?
Fall, autumn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find summer way too hot. I do like winter, but I think fall is beautiful.
It's like the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that like, I'm super curious, does that like inspire your like cooking or like work in any way? Or?
Yeah, you know what, it kind of does.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily why I answered, but I think I do gravitate towards a lot of those kinds of flavors, you know, the kind of earthy flavors and squash and root vegetables and those kinds of things. So I think there is an element of that, yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I think for myself, my favorite season, I don't know, since like last fall, I have just been taking in the seasons anew. Like all the colors have been really hitting me. And like, I was walking around my neighborhood the other day and there was just like this tree with really beautiful flowers on it.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know if I can answer this right now. I feel like I'm going through a phase of just like taking it all in. Right. So I'm going to refrain from answering that.
Okay. I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, me neither until I did it. Okay. Oh my gosh. It's like slide.
Who set this thing up?
Yeah. Okay, we got this. Oh my gosh. I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay. In the interest of not knocking it over, I guess.
38. Okay. 38. What's something you're obsessed with?
What am I obsessed with? Oh man, that's kind of a tough question. At the moment, local politics.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't stop.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. We've had sort of a transitional municipal government for the last 4 years where we elected a slate of people that were sort of not the typical city councilors, not the typical mayor, and there's been a little bit of an upheaval. So I don't want to turn this into like a political thing, but it is. It's been something I've really focused on lately. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. Something I'm obsessed with lately. I don't know. I've been playing like Pokemon Go, as sad as that may sound. So
wildly different.
Yeah, very wildly different. And I don't know. It's a little bit of an escape from stuff like that, I'm assuming. So yeah.
I mean, on the flip side, I do an awful lot of doom scrolling, and that's probably the escape, although it feeds in, so it's problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you knocked some of this one out already.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
That one, and it's number 16.
16. Who is someone who inspires you?
Oh man, yeah, I find inspiration from a lot of people. I think at the moment, my mom, especially because we've spent a lot more time together in the last sort of year or two than I did for the whole time I lived in Toronto. So I feel like I've reconnected with her a little bit, but she's retired from being a business owner, and I was really inspired by the way that she and my dad, when he was alive, ran the business because their approach was kind of unique. They ran a furniture store that was arguably the most expensive, but also had the best quality in the city. And they were really kind of like stuck on this idea that they're not going to compromise what they do. They picked their lane and they stayed in it. And I'm really inspired by that. And so my mom continues to be that way. You might describe her as being stubborn, but I don't think that's actually the case. I think she's very clear on who she is and what she wants, and I really admire that quality.
Yeah, and stubbornness, I think, often gets a bad rap because I think that sometimes it's just like persistence in disguise, you know, or like, not compromising on things that are super important to you. And
exactly.
I'm curious to hear more about that. I'm sure maybe we'll learn more about that.
It'll come in,
future segments. So nice. Someone who inspires me, I'm gonna go with Mac.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Mac. Lives his life and does his thing, and it's very inspirational to me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, I will pick the next block. There we go. Nice. 37. What's one thing you're always misplacing?
I'm pretty good at keeping stuff together.
I was going to say, you seem like it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I keep everything in the same pocket all the time, like that kind of thing. Although I do live and die on a clipboard that has, order guides and planning and those kinds of things. And I find that I set it down because I get distracted. So that's probably something where I walk around going, where did I put that clipboard? Yeah, that's probably the thing.
Super fair, very pragmatic too. Like, I love that. I think for myself, like pens, I try and put them everywhere, but whenever I need one, I just don't have it handy. Much more random.
I don't have pens in my coat, but usually chef jackets always have the pocket, right? So I almost always have a pen on me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Maybe I should figure out how to add that. Anyway, I'll think about that later. I'm going to throw it to you for our next block here.
Oh, man. Okay. Oh, hey, the first one I touched felt pretty loose. All right.
Nice.
Oh, question number 1.
Yeah. Question number 1 is, what brings you joy?
Wow.
It
shouldn't be this massive question, but
I know, right?
It kind of is. At the moment, because the restaurant is kind of life consuming at the moment. Yeah, I think that the thing that genuinely does is when people appreciate what we do here. When they have a good experience, I think that's when I'm the happiest. Is when we get people who say, what you're doing here really resonates, and it puts a smile on my face.
Kind of that idea of gratitude, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Allows you to be grateful for this is why I'm doing it.
This is why we're here. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Interesting. I think for me, what brings me joy, I've been trying to find joy in like the mundane lately.
Okay.
So like going for a walk and appreciating a tree,
Yeah.
playing Pokemon Go, just the mundane things is what I've been trying to do.
Right.
Yeah. I think we have time for at least one more here.
Okay.
This one seems to be working. 46. I gotta flip our page here. 46. What's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self? Again, another deep question.
That's a deep question.
What would young Adam need to know?
Be a little bit better with money.
Mm.
Toronto was the first while that I lived there. I did a lot of partying, and I really like lived my life, which was
Nice.
good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, and it's the time to do it when you're young. But I do wish that I would have been a bit more responsible financially, because I would have put myself in a better position. So
Sure.
yeah.
Very pragmatic. Again, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I can obviously always be better with finances, but a piece of advice I would give my younger self. Don't be afraid to embarrass yourself. I don't know.
All right.
Which, I don't know, as an actor is just got to get okay with it and
Right.
figure out how to take care of yourself. So, yeah. We got the pragmatic and the, I don't even know what that is, so we'll leave it there.
Cool.
Awesome. Great. That's all the time we have for this segment.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Absolutely.
This has been the Windy City's Finest on location.
Welcome to Windy City's Finest on location here at Hometown. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is
Adam.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the first segment with Perry, Adam. I'm getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So this or that, and the tumbling towers and all that.
Yeah.
But this portion we really like to get into kind of like your journey as an artist, as a chef, your cooking journey and career.
Sure.
And learn a bit about Hometown as well. Looking forward to the conversation. So
Awesome.
I guess to start, I know you kind of mentioned at the top of the first segment, but tell me a little bit about Hometown.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before, we consider it to be an upscale comfort restaurant. We're trying to take a little bit of a unique spin on familiar items, and that's kind of the inspiration behind it. I spent a lot of my career in Toronto, so I've got probably some influences that maybe some folks that have spent their career here wouldn't have, and maybe some exposure to some other, like just kind of ethnic foods and that kind of thing. So I try to incorporate that, and I kind of said that, the menu is a bit of a love letter to my career. I'm a little over 25 years into the culinary world, so it's kind of a culmination of a lot of the things that I got to experience in my past, and it's really cool to be able to just kind of have free reign to do whatever I want with the menu.
Awesome. Absolutely, yeah. What sort of things are on the menu?
Well, it ranges from the very kind of accessible and basic. We do a really good burger. We have a great Caesar salad. Those kinds of things that are really familiar. And then we step a little bit outside with a lot of our features and some of our kind of more unique things that we do, like Sunday dinners, where people have the opportunity to experience a blind tasting menu once a month, and that kind of thing. And then we change the menu 3 times a year as well. So there's always the opportunity to refresh things a little bit and just kind of put a little bit of a spin. So some of the stuff that maybe is a bit more unique is like we have a pulled duck poutine on the menu right now with brown butter, snap peas, and like a demi-glaze, and then a pear and red wine reduction. I don't think that's something that you'd find on a typical Medicine Hat menu. No. So that's where we get to be a little bit more adventurous.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Nice. Oh, yeah. I guess we can kind of like go back to the beginning of, because you and your family grew up in Medicine Hat, right?
Yes, born and raised.
Yeah. Tell me about growing up in Medicine Hat.
Sure. I think I had a pretty normal childhood, honestly. Like, my parents worked really hard. They worked other jobs, and then when I was a teenager, they opened up a furniture store, and so they went into business for themselves, and obviously that was a little bit of a financial risk, but also it involved a lot of work for the whole family, if that makes sense. I played hockey and baseball when I was a kid, and I had a really close-knit friend group, and it's a fairly small town. I think it was only about 40,000 people when I was a kid. So it really had that small town feel where, you'd play street hockey in your neighborhood and you knew everybody that lived nearby and that kind of thing. We formed a really close-knit community.
Nice. That sounds great. Yeah. And when did you start cooking?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's kind of multiple answers there because as a kid, I'd sit on the counter while grandma was making dinner or mom was making dinner or something to that effect. So I started to get a little bit interested. My mom worked some shift work when I was little, so we had the running joke that if dad was cooking, it was like pizza or Dairy Queen. But somewhere along the way, I kind of learned to make like mac and cheese and those kinds of things, right? But at 14, I got a job at a family restaurant. And I quickly took the interest in the cooking side of things. I started out as like a dishwasher and busboy, but yeah, pretty soon I was really interested in like, oh, what does that taste like, and why do you put those things together, and that kind of thing. So started to get a little bit inspired by it. And when I moved to Toronto, it just opened up a whole different world. There's so many different cultures, and there's such a vibrant food scene out there. And I got the opportunity to try some stuff that I just never even knew existed, right? And that just opened everything up for me.
Nice. And at what point did you move to Toronto? Like, how old would you have been?
So I was 21. It was 2004. And I was in a band. We'd lived in Calgary for a little while. We'd played a lot around here in Southern Alberta, and we wanted to try to put our cards on the table and see if we could make it big, which didn't pan out. I still play music now, but not in quite the same way. It's a little bit more of a casual thing. But yeah, we really tried hard to make ourselves big. But the thing is that being a musician doesn't pay the bills, right? So had to learn a different skill along the way. So I was always in kitchens when I was in Toronto, and there's a flexibility built into that as well, right? Because a lot of people that are kind of like artists or kind of in that space often work in restaurant industry jobs as well. So usually you could get time off if you needed to for a gig and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Like, how long were you like trying to make it as a musician in Toronto?
God. The better part of 10 years,
Oh, wow.
I think. Yeah, in various bands. The one that I moved out there with, we kind of parted ways, and I found myself in a different one. Did a little bit of touring, opened for some bigger artists and that kind of thing. Recorded a couple of albums, and then started to play in some cover bands as more like a weekend thing for a lot of years. And yeah, it's somewhere along the way it just kind of became apparent that probably wasn't going to be a career, not one that could sustain me anyways. So, but at the same time, I was really starting to get myself immersed in that Toronto restaurant scene, and I'd found myself in some really good roles and had some leadership positions and that kind of thing, and I think that's really where it ignited a bit more of a passion for me.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you realized that, and that you had that passion for cooking as well.
Yeah.
And didn't quite give up on the music, of course.
Right.
And I guess because you were in Toronto for like 16 years, right? Or
17.
17 years, yeah, quite a while. Let's talk a bit more about that experience. You mentioned you're at different restaurants and being exposed to different cuisines. What sort of restaurants were you working at in Toronto?
Man, it runs the gamut. Anywhere from like a kind of greasy spoon style diner all the way to casual fine dining, catering, breakfast joints, pubs, I mean, anywhere in between. Along the way, though, I did find myself as the executive chef at a college. Not teaching a culinary program, but just running all of the culinary operations from a student bar, a burrito shop, a cafe, and then all of their catering operations as well. And so a big team of students, a huge commercial kitchen, and a lot of volume. I mean, we sat, I think, 160 people in the bar, and the burrito shop would be lined up down the atrium, like that kind of thing. So really got to flex some creative muscle, but also really had to work on the organization and the leadership part of it, because I had young staff that were largely inexperienced. And much to the annoyance of my staff now, I still tell stories from that experience. Yeah.
So that was kind of a shift for you and responsibility and.
Yeah, I think that's when I really started to get into sort of like the management and business side of things. When you're a sous chef and a line cook, it's very like process oriented. But once you get up into the executive chef role, there's still an awful lot of hands-on, and there's an awful lot of food, obviously, but yeah, the management and business side of things really comes into it, and that's where you start to have to deal with managing people's personalities and hiring and firing and making those financial decisions and costing and budgeting and dealing with clients for catering and all those kinds of things that maybe people don't think about necessarily when they think of a chef, because they if your point of reference is something like Hell's Kitchen where it's just like Gordon Ramsay yelling at people about the duck sauce. Like there's a lot more to it than that, and maybe people don't often realize that. Right?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah. And I guess, like at what point was that when you were in Toronto, roughly, you were at the school?
So that would have been about 2010, 2011, and I spent 8 years there. And then I was actually kind of headhunted by Shopify, the big tech company. So they were opening up, renovating a building to open up their corporate headquarters in Toronto. And they were doing a business dining program. And they wanted somebody to kind of essentially run that program and feed all their staff. So that became 17 chefs working under me, 1,000 people a day, breakfast and lunch. And we had very strict guidelines around like not being able to repeat menus. We had to have vegan, gluten-free, and all kinds of different kind of dietary options for people. So it really forced us to think on our feet, because you could have one idea for one item that you wanted to do, but then it was, how do we make it vegan? How do we make it gluten-free? How do we conform to, kind of various like religious accommodations and those kinds of things, right? So yeah, really had to get creative and start to reach out to different suppliers and think about, how to make things all kind of like equitable still, if that makes sense, right? You couldn't have somebody who was vegan feeling like they were second class because they weren't getting access to the same kind of food as somebody else, right? So so there was almost like a philosophical shift there that was kind of cool.
Yeah, interesting. You hadn't really experienced that before?
No, not quite in that capacity. I think around that time was when people were coming in with maybe more prevalent kind of allergies and dietary restrictions, and but there was a little bit of a shift right around that time, probably in that like 2018 sort of time period where it just kind of became the default setting that of course we have these kinds of options for people, right? It was no longer an annoyance. It was no longer cumbersome. It was like, yeah, of course we have that for you. We're, here's what we're proud to offer, as opposed to here's this thing that's just kind of sitting in the corner just in case, right?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, that word equitable makes total sense. Yeah, I agree. Just that food just got better over time because there was more demand, and
exactly.
And even non-vegetarian people like vegetarian food, and
yeah, absolutely. And there was a shift in the commercial side of it too, right? When you'd start to see things labeled gluten-free in grocery stores that maybe you'd never even thought of before. And just trying to really kind of keep that accessibility for people.
That's great. Yeah. And I guess like what came next in your culinary career?
Well, COVID,
Okay.
As it hit everybody, right?
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate that the company at the time took really good care of my team. And I mean, they're a global company, so I speak pretty highly of the way that they treated everyone, because they paid the entire staff for a pretty long period of time, and they were really fair to everybody. And then I kind of bounced around a little bit, and it was a bit of a transitional time in my life. I was married and I'd been divorced at this point, so in a way I was kind of starting over, both professionally and personally. So I was in a production kitchen for a little while. I was back at a university for a little while. Just trying to find something that was providing a certain amount of stability. I ended up at an all-girls private school as the executive chef, which again allowed me to be really creative and have a lot of fun. But it was just a time in my life where I was not ready to start over in Toronto. I was in my late 30s at the time, and I really needed to slow down, I guess. Like, the pace of Toronto is crazy, the expense is crazy, right? So it started to become a lot more appealing to move back to Medicine Hat and own a house for the first time, just those things that aren't really accessible in a place like Toronto. And so I started to kind of crave that.
And then what kind of finally brought you back here?
Well, I called my sister in kind of fall of 2020 and said, I think quite literally, I said, hey, if I moved back in a year and opened a restaurant, or wanted to open a restaurant, would you do it with me? And she didn't even hesitate and said, yep, absolutely. So it was like, okay, well, if you don't have to think about it, then neither do I. So let's start making these plans. And so that's where the concept of Hometown started to grow. We settled on a name. We engaged a designer to start thinking about a brand identity. And then once I had actually, purchased a house and made the plans to move back and tied up any kind of loose ends I had in TO, then it became about trying to find the proper location and really lock down what our business plan was and all those kind of things about like, how are we going to fund this thing, and just those kinds of things, right? The very kind of practical conversations had to start to happen, but it definitely just started with a vision of, this is what we are, this is what we're not, and let's go from there.
Interesting. Yeah. And it seemed like you had a lot of experience in Toronto in various things. I find that interesting about even just like working in like non-restaurant, or at least what I think of as restaurants, non-restaurant settings, and that bringing that experience back here. And I guess like tell me a bit more about that process of like now owning your own restaurant and finding the place, things like that.
Yeah, so we had to make a decision first onto whether or not we were going to try to buy something that existed, as a previous operation, or already had a commercial kitchen versus say just an empty building that we would build into. And obviously there's a lot of expense related to that because restaurant equipment and HVAC systems and those kinds of things are all extremely expensive. So we did look at a number of different buildings, and for one reason or another, they just weren't quite what we wanted. It wasn't enough space, or it just didn't quite meet the goal of what we were looking for. When we found this building that we're presently in, we knew that it needed a significant renovation in the front of house, but the kitchen was in pretty good shape, all things considered. And so there was a pretty significant cost savings because of that. And it really allowed us to kind of do what we wanted in the building aesthetically, which was really important because the aesthetics and the layout of the building have to match the food, or else we're not going to get the experience for our guests that we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think we're going to get a little tour later on. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we can kind of see a little bit of it, but maybe describe some of those aesthetics that were important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really cool elements in here. I think we wanted to have a little bit of an industrial kind of feel because, with the Hometown name and the idea of kind of calling back to Medicine Hat's roots, it was really important that it needed to feel timeless, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. We didn't want to be too on trend or have something that looked really kind of like flashy. The idea was that this place might have existed for several years already when you walk in the door. It just so happens that it was a brand new renovation. But we did find some really cool elements, and when we do kind of tour, we'll explain a bit more. But even just things like the prototype of the gas lamps that are behind us, I think those are just really good scores, right? And they tie directly into the history of the city, which I think is really cool.
Nice, yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, we don't want to spoil too much. We'll get at the tour later, but
sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and I like that comment you said about figure out what you are and what you aren't. I don't know. Tell me a little more about that. What isn't Hometown?
That was the easier list to put together, honestly. And when this thing was just the germ of an idea, people would sort of ask that question. Well, what are you going to do? And I said, honestly, I'd probably have to start by telling you what we're not going to do, which is we don't want to be typical or predictable. We don't want to be kitschy. We don't want to be. We don't want it to feel like, oh yeah, this is the same menu as everybody else, or we're not going to do things like wing specials. We're not going to put a bunch of TVs everywhere and just be like a sports bar, right? And there's nothing wrong with operations like that. It's just that there's already a lot of that, and there's plenty of options here. We really wanted to do something different, and so it was really important to us that we just try to be a little bit unconventional in how we approach everything. We wanted really good cocktails. We didn't want people to feel like they were just having the same experiences that they've had elsewhere in the city. So it was really trying to be unique.
Yeah, very much feels that way. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm curious. I know your sister's here, but what's it like you and your sister working together? How does your relationship work that way?
Well, she's here, so I have to say no.
No,
actually, genuinely, it's been great. We've, save for when we were like teenagers, we've always gotten along really well. And honestly, I think that we really complement one another really well. I have a lot of things that I'm very good at, and I have a lot of things that I'm very bad at. And it's almost as if we fill each other's like gaps that way. The strengths that Jen has are often my weaknesses, and vice versa. So I really think that we complement each other well, and she does such a fantastic job of the guest experience, interacting with people genuinely. I've spent a lot of my career behind a door and in a kitchen, so my default setting is not to be the most outgoing person. Whereas, she spent her whole life here, so she knows. The joke is that she knows just about everybody in the city, and honestly, that's kind of true sometimes when people walk in the door. So yeah, she does a great job with the aesthetics. She does a great job with the guest experience, and then I try as much as I can to match that with the caliber of the food.
Yeah, it's a good pairing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and I'm curious. Like, you've been open a year or two now?
Just under. So we're about 10 months right now.
Yeah, almost a year. Yeah. Like, were there any kind of like challenges when either getting the building or renovating, anything that came up that was a challenge when you're opening Hometown?
Yeah, there were a few. I mean, it took longer to do the renovation than we had originally planned. And that's, the building had some skeletons in it. It's a very old building. The original construction was in the early 1900s. And then there was like several renovations over the course of time. So once you start opening up walls and floors and stuff, you start to just find some things that needed significant upgrading. So that delayed things from our original timeline. And then, of course, with that comes, additional costs and that kind of thing. So yeah, there were some challenges there, but overall, I think once we had the timeline nailed down, we had spent so much time on the planning side of things to really know what our rollout plan was going to be. And I think we had such a solid vision. I mean, the menu was basically locked in. The decor and the design elements were locked in. We knew more or less what this place was going to look like as a finished product, both from the menu side and the aesthetic side. That really it came together pretty quickly once the kind of principal renovations were done.
Yeah, well, that's good. There wasn't anything major that you had to
no
deal with?
Complete derailment, right? It was just delays, but those are to be expected with such a big project.
Yeah. I guess I know, like, you talked about like the things you learned when you were in Toronto in your culinary work. Have you learned anything now, like here in Hometown, owning your own restaurant?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be able to count all of the things I learned, but there is a big difference between being an owner and being a chef, like kind of just a chef, because the responsibility is all on our shoulders. And the thing that I don't know that I thought about ahead of time was that there's a number of people's livelihoods that are literally on the line, and they rest solely on our shoulders. And I hadn't really anticipated that until the staff walked in the door, you know what I mean? And it was like, oh my God, like, we have to be responsible for these people. Like, some of them have families and kids, and some of them are trying to pay bills, or they're trying to move out of their parents' place, or they're trying to figure out what the next step of their life is. And we have to really try to take some responsibility for that, because if this thing doesn't succeed, then that affects their lives just as much as it affects ours, right? And that was huge. That was a very heavy kind of realization to have. So.
Yeah, but you kind of changed, or took on a certain business model because of that, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so with that responsibility, we felt that it was really important to take care of our staff. So one of the first things that we explored was registering with the Alberta Living Wage Network. And I believe we are the only or one of very few restaurants in Southern Alberta that are registered with them. And so we pay above what is considered by that network to be the living wage. It's reevaluated annually, and we've made a commitment that we're always going to be above that base level. So we pay our staff significantly higher than the minimum wage. And then with that, we provide benefits. We do a family meal every day when we close for a period. We close between 3 and 5 daily. And so we sit down and all eat as a group. So we take really good care of our people, and it's built a lot of loyalty with them as well. The majority of staff have been here since the very beginning and quite literally helped us build the place. Like, they were assembling tables and hauling things in, and some of their first shifts were meet me at my garage and load up a U-Haul full of stuff, and then we're going to drive down to the restaurant and bring it up the stairs. You know what I mean? They weren't serving and bartending. They were literally like hauling things upstairs for their first 2 weeks of working here, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was great because it gave them a certain amount of kind of loyalty, but also a certain amount of ownership. They really felt like like they were involved in the process from the ground up, and they had some insights on some things that, hey, what if we put this here instead of there? And it was like, yeah, great idea. Let's put that there, right? So yeah, it ended up being kind of mutually beneficial, I think. Another thing that we do, because we pay them a living wage, and we're really trying to, again, be unique and kind of break the mold, is we don't prompt for tips on our POS systems. So of course, if people want to leave a gratuity, we're going to accept it. We're not going to turn it down. But we do sort of share that evenly between the staff that are working in any given day. And that really just acknowledges that it's kind of all one team, right? And we're all working towards the same goal. And the beauty of that is that it really ends up with a lot of collaboration, right? There's a kind of a 360 accountability built in. And what's nice about that is that if your server gets busy, somebody else will step in and make sure that you're taken care of, that your waters are refilled, or that you have another cocktail on the way, or whatever it happens to be, because they're not competing with one another. And in a typical restaurant setting, they kind of would be competing with one another. So we've tried to really kind of break that mold.
That does sound very unique. And it seems like, I wonder, like, from the customer experience, do you ever get comments about that? Like, they would notice that there's no option to tip?
Yeah, well, when it comes time to pay the bill, that typically is when people, because they're so used to being prompted for a tip and that kind of awkward interaction that tends to happen. Sometimes people will comment and say, oh, I meant to leave a tip and there was no option. And then that's the opportunity to kind of just explain the kind of philosophy behind it. And it's resonated for the most part. I think a lot of people are really on board with it, and they really appreciate that that we understand that it's our responsibility to take care of our staff. And in just about any other industry, that's just understood, right? You pay people what they're worth, and they do the job that you've hired them for. And so it's not fundamentally that groundbreaking of a thing. There's the odd person that is maybe uncomfortable with it, but I would say that the majority of people react positively.
I would assume so, because I find sometimes when you're, tipping, it's like you kind of feel like you need to, and it's just makes it a bit an awkward way to maybe end a transaction. But I think it's really cool that you're doing that. And I'm curious, like, you mentioned those like family meals. Like, what's the vibe around that? Tell me about that.
Yeah, they're really fun. Frankly, a lot of times we're just using up leftovers, right? It's, and the running joke is that we eat the same thing on Sundays because it's always the end of the brunch period. And so it's just like, oh yeah, of course it's, home fries and bacon again, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. What I like about it is that it's a forced kind of break, right? Because it can be really intense, especially on the kitchen side of things, but obviously in the front of house too. There's a lot going on. Time evaporates very quickly when you're busy. And so what's nice about it is that, like, at 3:00, we know everyone's going to stop and sit and take a break. And it's the opportunity to, like, not talk shop anymore. So a lot of times we're just like talking about what you did for your weekend, or what your plans are tomorrow, or are you going to the baseball game, or what are you doing next, or whose birthday is it? Like, just that kind of stuff, right? And so it really allows the team, I think, to grow a little bit stronger. It's just, eating a meal with people is just such a wholesome experience, right? And so I think it's important that we do that with our crew every day.
That sounds lovely. When I open siestas, I think I'm going to have a break right there in the afternoon. And
well, it's right in the name.
It sounds perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great. I think, again, that makes I've never worked in a restaurant, but that sounds like a unique thing, that a good bonding experience for you and your staff. Yeah,
I will say it may not be unique. It may be unique in a place like Medicine Hat, but sure. But in bigger cities, it's like, it's almost exclusively referred to as family. It's just family. Hey, it's family's up, family's ready, it's time for family. And it's very common in, like, the more sort of higher end restaurant scene. Probably a little bit less common here, but again, just something that I wanted to kind of bring in into the the Yeah. And I assume that your staff is receptive to that. That's great. Yeah, there's no one who's against it. That's for sure. Yeah, they don't mind being fed every day. Of course. Sure. Sounds amazing. It's a big perk. Yeah. Nice. Oh, that's great. Yeah. It forces me to eat too, honestly. That's one thing that in a lot of my career, I'd spend 10, 12 hours and not eat, because it's just, you're always distracted by something else. So sure. So honestly, it's probably better for me overall too. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. There was one thing I was curious about, Adam, on your website. Like, you have like a bio, and then like the very first sentence in the bio is like, I don't
consider myself a chef.
Right.
And I found that so interesting that you would have that as the first sentence of your bio. I don't know, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the bio kind of goes on to say that I'm like a renegade plumber and and the person that rehangs the shelves that fell off the wall or whatever it is, right? But I didn't go to culinary school, so that's one of the big things. Like, you know, there's a point, I think, that you get into a career where you're in management positions or those leadership positions, and you've got a team working under you, where it's appropriate to call yourself a chef just simply because of what you do, right? What your day looks like and what your role is and what your salary kind of dictates that you're responsible for. But you know, at the same time, there's always been a little bit of that imposter syndrome of like, you know, I'm not on paper, I'm not really qualified to do this. Do you know what I mean? I happen to be pretty good at it and I've been doing it a long time, but really technically I don't have that paper. Like I don't have that qualification, right? I couldn't call myself a doctor. But I feel mostly comfortable calling myself a chef, and then every now and then I go, am I really, right? And so that's and again, you know, when we talked a little bit about how more of that, like the business and the management side of the food industry, the more responsibility that I take on with that, the more that I start to kind of joke around about not being a chef or not feeling like a chef. Also, I don't have a lot of the formality of it. I don't insist that people call me chef. There's definitely times when that's appropriate, depending on what we're doing. You know, if we have like kind of a catering thing, or if there's we had a guest chef in this weekend to do a kitchen takeover, and so maybe it's appropriate to use more formal titles in those scenarios. But for the most part, I don't want people to call me that. And yeah, so there's a lot wrapped up in that sentence and in that kind of sentiment.
I would, yeah, I'd say for sure, yeah. And I guess, like, did you ever, like, when did you not feel like you were an imposter? Did it ever go away, that imposter syndrome? Or
well, it comes and goes.
Yeah.
I think that the more that people have good experiences, and the more that things resonate, like what we're doing resonates with people, the more that that kind of breaks down, and I feel like, okay, you know what? Yeah, of course I know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm well into this career by now. But yeah, it creeps up every now and then. Every now and then I have an idea where I go, I don't know if this is going to work, and then it's kind of like, oh man, in the back of my mind, right? And then 9 times out of 10 it works, or at least it's passable, right?
Yeah.
so then I kind of feel good about it again.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I feel like it also like fits in with the vibe I'm getting of like you mentioned, family and having those lunches together and things, and make it more approachable, and it's not.
Well, and collaboration is huge on in this place, and you know, I love to take suggestions from my crew, and even if they're familiar or what I would maybe condescendingly call like pedestrian, there's always a way to step it up a little bit. So somebody will come with an idea and I'll go, hey, you know what, that's a great start. What if we do this, or just twist it this way? And often we arrive at something that we're really proud of in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we have time for like one more question, but we try to end on. I think, so what we ask people is like, how has your artistic practice like changed your everyday life? So I guess like, how has cooking or owning a restaurant kind of changed your everyday life?
Yeah, I put an awful lot more time into this place than I ever have in other aspects of my career. I mean, obviously, that's just part and parcel with being an owner of the business. So yeah, there is that. I mean, this is kind of like life consuming in a way, but it's also just my identity, right? And I think that's really cool. Like I define myself now very much as this is what I do, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'd said, you know, I'm never going to have another job interview again, or don't have to worry about my resume, right? This is it. This is what I'm going to do. And you know, there might be other opportunities down the line. There might be other locations or other concepts that we want to open, but Hometown is me. It's us, and that's what we're going to do now. So it's cool. It's cool to have it wrapped up, and I think that's a big change, because it was a job at one point, and now it's literally my whole life. So
great. I think that's wonderful. I'm glad you've arrived at that. And yeah,
me too.
I think it's a good place to end on. So yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation, Adam. Thanks so much for chatting.
Awesome.
Yeah, and this has been the Windy City's Finest on location, of course, here at Hometown.
Hello and welcome once again to the Windy City's Finest on location here at Hometown. He's Mac, I'm Perry, and this is...
Jen.
Yes, I'm so excited that we're finally getting to feature you and see you on camera here. You've been patiently waiting off to the side, which I appreciate greatly. Yeah, can you tell us what your role is here at Hometown?
So Adam and I own Hometown together. I am front of house, so general manager, and he is chef. So I kind of take everything from the kitchen forward and make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, I think that one of the ways Adam kind of described it was sort of that guest experience.
Yeah.
Has that always been like a thing for you that you value, or tell me a bit about that?
Definitely. So my entire career has always been customer service in any role that I've done, whether it's been in management or anything. So yeah, I've always been very much talking to the people, making sure everything's exactly how they need it in whatever role I've been in.
Another thing Adam mentioned was just that idea that, like, you know everybody that walks through the door. Is that true?
I mean, it feels true a lot of the time. So as he had said, our parents owned a furniture store for about 22 years, and I worked there. I mean, technically the whole time I had been there, but 15 years since being back from university. And so I did get to know a lot of the people in the community. And being that I had only moved away for school for 2 years. So, you know, 36 years in Medicine Hat is definitely, I feel like I know everybody. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that we'll do a bit more of a tour here and get an idea for the decor. But my understanding is that, like, you know, those roots here is like, that's really a part of the design and everything. What else can you tell me about that?
So I really wanted it to feel like you were dining in a friend's home, your grandma's house, something like that, where you feel like you can sit and just enjoy yourself for hours, whether it be true or you have somewhere to go after dinner. But I definitely wanted it to be comfortable. I wanted there to be elements of Medicine Hat, elements of our family, just to show the roots. Like, our roots in this city run very, very deep. So yeah.
That's awesome. One of the things that caught our eye when we first came up here is this piece. What can you tell us about this?
So there's not a lot that I know about the actual stove itself, other than the fact that it's gorgeous.
Sure.
It did take one of our servers about 2.5 hours to clean it because it was very dirty. But when she was cleaning it, she actually found a photo of the stove in somebody's home. We don't know whose house it is, but we just reframed it and thought, you know what, let's keep that on the stove so people can see that. That it did actually belong in a house at one point. And the other thing that we really love about this, which apparently isn't very common, is that it does have built-in salt and pepper shakers. Yeah, that are intact, and so super cool. And apparently very rare. Usually those get lost over time. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm very much the type that, like, I just have the salt and pepper sitting on top, and then I have to be careful, is it going to burn? Or
It's very heavy. Adam and some of our kitchen crew are the ones that moved it up here and basically got it in place and said, it goes with the building. We're not moving that again.
Absolutely. And I really love the kind of the touch with the photo, showing that, like, it's the homey feel,
it is,
right?
Yep.
Like,
it actually came out of somebody's house. Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Unless you have anything else to share on that, I think we'll move over to our next spot here. Just get more of an idea of things. So I love the spoons behind us here.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the spoons?
So spoon collection, apparently that was a big thing back in the day. When I was little, I remember polishing my one grandmother's spoons all the time. It was like my favorite thing to do. She would tell me the story of where they all came from and all of that. So when both of my grandmothers passed away, I inherited their spoons. And then I thought, well, what do you do with spoons? So I thought, well, let's make some art. So, I mean, there's stories behind every single one of them. Most of them I don't remember the stories to, but they are all very unique, and we get a lot of comments where people say, I have spoons at home, do you want mine? And I say, no, I still have a box full, so I'm good.
That's super fun. Is there, like, any ones with, like, is there a distinct story behind one of them?
So there's one, and I don't remember which frame it is on, but my mom's parents had a house in Palm Springs. And there's one specifically from Palm Springs. So that one's got a little bit of a, and there's a couple Medicine Hat ones, that kind of thing as well. So,
I love that. And I just love that idea that people come up here and they're like, oh, I have spoons too.
Spoons, Yeah.
Can I give them to you?
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
When I told one lady, I said, oh no, like I'm good. I still have a box. And she said, don't be surprised if they're just here one day. And I said, okay. So,
I'm gonna tip you in spoons.
yes, exactly.
I love it. And then also back here we have these photographs. What can you tell me about those?
So there's 3 family recipes on the wall. So that was super important to us too, just to show that. They're all printed on tea towels. So the one in the middle is my grandmother's overnight bun recipe. We have my grandfather's chili recipe on the top there. And it's actually written in my aunt's handwriting, and she had passed away shortly before we opened. And then the other one is my other grandmother's nuts and bolts, which we make every year at Christmas. So yeah, we had actually, when my one grandmother passed away, my cousin had sent all of the other cousins the overnight bun recipe on tea towels. And so when Adam and I were talking about opening, we went, let's frame that, put it on the wall. And then we ended up getting the other 2 done at the same time. So those are really unique and just family. And then the other ones are photos that we got through archives with the city. One of them, the top one there, is the actual building back in the day. I think that's 1942, if I remember correctly. And then just shots of the city as well. There's a milk delivery coin that's in one of the frames. There's old keys. There's pictures of iconic places of Medicine Hat, the teepee being one, Finley Bridge being the other. And yeah, so little touches of home.
Yeah, and I also love like the sparsity.
Yes.
Like it's not like, you know, cluttering the space.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that? Like just how do you decide?
So I went to school for interior decorating. So that kind of is my background.
Right.
So when we saw the space, it definitely didn't look like this. Upstairs was bedrooms. The floor wasn't open to below. And I remember thinking, I want it to be not busy so that you're not trying to have a conversation with the person across from you, but there's too many things to look at and too much stuff going on. So I wanted it to just be easy enough that if we get tired of it over the years, I can change stuff out easy without having to do a lot of work to the walls and that kind of thing too. But yeah, just nice and calming.
Yeah. And I'm also just noticing now, there's no TVs up here at least.
No TVs in the restaurant at all.
Yeah, and I actually love that.
Yeah.
It's like I almost took it for granted for a hot second there, but it's like, right, you're not distracted by the thing in the corner of your eye.
Yeah, and we do notice, actually me and some of the servers were just talking about this on the weekend, that we notice when people come in, especially couples, they typically aren't on their phones a lot. It's like they realize that this is like a date night or whatever, and they actually have a conversation with each other. So it's been really nice to see that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to move swiftly along here.
Yes.
We're going to take a look at the washroom.
Yes.
Because, and I promise there's a reason.
There's a reason, yes.
I don't know what the best way to set this up is, but if you want to just talk to us
Sure.
about
So I had randomly seen 2 Singer sewing machines and went, those would be really cool as a bathroom counter. And our plumbers were not as intrigued by the idea because we were very specific, obviously on sink size and placement and all of that because of the sewing machine.
Right.
But yeah, like they get a lot of attention. This is probably my favorite room that I got to design, which is so random because it's a bathroom. Right. But being that I could wallpaper it and put the sewing machines in there, so a little touch of modern, but a lot of still that kind of, everybody's grandma had a Singer sewing machine, right? So there's lots of people that come in here and they walk in there and they go, I have one of those at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with the spoons.
Same with the spoons. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So,
nice.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. We'll move swiftly along.
Yeah.
And we'll just plant ourselves at the top of the stairs
For
here.
Sure.
Just because I would love to get the backstory on the chandeliers.
Yeah, so these are the prototypes that the city used for the downtown gas lamps. They're very heavy. I believe when they actually made the gas lamps, they changed material because these were too heavy. But when I found them, they obviously weren't chandelier style. They had the poles and everything. And so when we started designing it and realized that, yes, we were able to open the floor up to the bar below, I said I wanted a really unique chandelier, and I talked to the electricians and they realized how heavy they were, and they're very well enforced and reinforced into the ceiling, which is great. But yeah, they're definitely a showstopper for sure. Yeah.
I love that. And again, just like that tying into the city
Yep.
feel
Yep,
and all
very
these bits of
much.
history.
Yeah.
Has there been any instances of like people recognizing them?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it often just like the,
No.
oh, wow.
Yeah, lots of people go, these look like the ones that were downtown. And so then we get to tell the story. But it's also Medicine Hat, when you look at some of the overpasses and stuff that the city has built, you actually see the gas lamp, like it's kind of our symbol.
Right.
So being that we get to have that in the building is even better.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I do just want to pivot, and if you're standing in front of the table here, what can you tell me about this door and the Schlitz?
The Schlitz lights, yeah. So the Schlitz lights actually were in our mom's childhood home before she was born. So we figure they're about 68 years old.
Wow.
And they were kind of the first thing that we turned on anytime we went to our grandparents' house. We'd go in the basement to play because that's where the kids went, right? And the first thing we did was flip that switch and watch them spin.
Yeah.
But red and blue weren't really our colors. So I said, like, I really want to incorporate these lights, but I don't really know how to make that work color-wise. And then I found the doors. There's just something about them that I love. They're obviously very old, but they've got the red and blue and the stained glass. And I thought that's going to be interesting on that wall without it being a piece of art or more spoons. And honestly, the electricians wired them in and we've turned them on. And the only thing we had to do was change one light bulb. But they have worked and they've been in multiple family members' homes and in boxes and all of that. And
I love that. And I love how you were able to incorporate the color scheme. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing the train.
Yeah.
Just like right outside.
Yeah. So we're across from the train station. So I wanted to bring a little bit of that in as well. And the other thing that was a coincidence, so our official opening date was November 30th, which is when this picture, the schematic of it was actually filed. So didn't realize that until we got the actual picture, but yeah, so that was kind of a nice coincidence. So.
Yeah, it was meant to be. It was meant to be.
Meant to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. On our way down here.
Yeah.
This actually wasn't open, is that right?
Correct. So when you came in the building, there was kind of a vestibule. You turned a corner, you went through another door to come up the stairs, and they turned here. And this was all filled in. This was bedrooms up here. And so when we looked at the building, Adam kind of said to me, it has a kitchen. And I went, that's great. It doesn't look like a restaurant.
Right.
So we wandered around for a while and I said, okay, if you let me cut a hole in the floor and make open to below, I can do it. And he just looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. So I don't know that he actually understood the entire vision until probably we painted.
Right.
And then he went, okay, I get it. So yeah, so this was super fun. And anybody who had been in the building before, who's now come in now, is blown away because it looks nothing like it did before. Yeah.
Well, let's go head on down here to just in front of the bar there. And yeah, it's really cool thinking about how this was sealed off.
Yeah. Kind of gives a different vibe. Lots of people, when they come in, they want to sit upstairs. That's kind of the ideal spot. I think it's because, you know, you can watch the trains go by and that kind of thing. So we do get a lot of people that request upstairs. But it's great that you can sit and watch your drinks being made and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Very cool. Anything to add about our bar here?
When we talked about a bar, I knew because of the size of the space, we weren't going to be able to do a bar that people can sit at. Sure. Nobody wants to sit this close to the front door with their back to the door. And on that side, it was just a little bit too tight for servers and whatnot to get through. So I said the bar has to be super interesting in other ways. And the cement top was kind of the first thing that I said. I said, I want to pour a cement top on there. I talked to a couple companies and they went, I don't think it's going to work. But we found one guy who said, oh yeah, I can do that, no problem for you. And it's been very popular. Lots of people like it. One couple that's become kind of regulars for us are redoing their kitchen and they're actually putting cement countertops in because of our bar. So that was pretty awesome.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Awesome. And this is kind of our
host stand. For sure. I didn't want it to be anything that kind of blocked anything off. I wanted to be able to see through it. We didn't want to put in seating down here if you're waiting for a table because it would just have been a little bit cumbersome. Totally. So yeah, this was one of those pieces that is kind of a family piece as well. It was actually used as a desk for a family friend's grandfather who was the mechanics teacher at one of the local high schools. And this was his desk. He made it himself. So yeah, so when she said, I don't know what to do with this, I said, I have an idea.
Yeah. That is amazing. And I love all the little connections into like, oh, this person's family member
Exactly.
had this thing that we brought in. I absolutely
Yeah,
love that.
it was
Kind of
super important to do it that way.
Yeah, resourcefulness.
Yeah.
I think we're going to take a brief intermission and just switch out and get a quick peek at the kitchen. But thank you so
No
much for your
problem.
time and energy and insight.
Yeah.
We will be right back. We're back. And we're back with Adam. And yeah, we're going to take a quick gander at the kitchen here. So we'll just mosey on over there and take a look at the space on the way.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Nice. Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. And when we were kind of scouting out the kitchen here, what did you call this kind of thing behind us here?
Yeah, this is commonly referred to as a galley kitchen.
Yeah.
It essentially just means it's one long straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. And what else can you tell me about your kitchen space? Is there anything that's like different from like previous places that you've worked? Or is it the kind of bare bones, or what do you got here?
Yeah, I'd say it's fairly standard. There were pieces that were here already when we bought the building. And so because of plumbing or other sort of conduit, we weren't able to move them. So in some ways we had to work around that and just kind of plan with what the existing pieces were. Okay. But yeah, it's a little tighter at times than I'd like it to be, especially when it gets busy. Yeah. But overall, I think it's a really workable kitchen. It's got ample storage space, and there's plenty of equipment in here for execution. So we haven't reached our capacity, if that makes sense.
And forgive me, I've never worked in a kitchen.
No problem.
How many people would be running around in the kitchen?
So on like a busy weekend night, there would be myself and usually 3 cooks, and then a dishwasher. And servers would come in and out because we don't have a separate sort of pass area. Sure. So they'll be coming into like this pathway that they're standing in right now to pick up food and to drop off plates and all that kind of stuff. So there's usually 3 servers on the floor plus Jen. So it can get chaotic. There might be 7 or 8 bodies in here at any given time if there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So I imagine that's where that like kind of family mentality, taking care of each other becomes really important.
And be loud. That's one of the big rules in the kitchen. Like you can't quietly sneak behind somebody. We're saying behind, we're saying sharp, we're saying hot. Yeah. We're yelling basically, not at one another, but we're yelling to let people know that, hey, I'm right here and I've got a hot pan or I've got a knife in my hand. So I don't want you to turn around and get poked, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I really appreciated in your interview with Mac was talking about how, like, you know, this is part of your identity now. Like, it's time consuming, like all consuming. What does that mean for you being in this space so often? Like, does it feel like a second home? Or
yeah. Honestly, sometimes it feels like a first home. Oh, nice. The running joke is that like I go home to sleep and shower. Like I spend so much time here. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, is that it's become really comfortable and familiar, and I've learned to just exist in this space, which is amazing. And there's little pieces of our identities kind of tucked around. I know Jen gave a little bit of a tour and talked about some of the family connections and those kinds of things. So it's really important to us to make sure that, like, if we're going to spend this much time here, we better have fun doing it. Yeah. And then by extension, everybody else that's in here is going to have fun as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I imagine that is maybe infectious.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. I do think that is the time that we have. Okay. So for this segment, so I'm super glad that we got to peek in here.
Yeah, me too.
And see you in your element here, and see the rest of the space. Yeah. This has been the Windy City's finest on location here, and he's Mac. I'm